For coming with such short notice. As you can see, this is our Comstat room. We've redone the Comstat room, changed things around in the last several months or last year, and this is where a lot of things are done to really strategize and move ahead with our plan, which we're going to talk about a little bit today. So this weekend, on a weekend recap, we had a busy weekend. We had 10 shooting incidents since Friday, with a total of 17 victims. Of the 17 victims, 3 victims have died. As of right now, it does not appear that any of these shootings are connected. The Washington Avenue shooting turned into a homicide. The victim is a Branson man in his 50s, and a person of interest is also from Branson, has been identified, and we're working with Branson PD. And if you have any more information on us, please call Crime Stoppers. The Kings Highway and Pennsylvania Avenue, there were other 2 homicides. Those are ongoing investigations where we get very good leads on them right now. As you can see, a lot of these things we're going to get into when it comes to these shootings, people are known to each other. Since Friday, 36 guns have been submitted to our crime lab. 4 were seized during a search warrant Friday that I think was out in the media, and 2 others were recovered by our officers after interrupting a shots fired incident at North Market and Broadway where 2 vehicles were shooting at each other. We made 2 arrests and we recovered a couple of firearms. Our officers are out there, they're doing the job. We're also competing against an historic low homicide rate. Last year was a 10-year low, not just coming down from the pandemic numbers, but also a 10-year homicide numbers. Where we stand today, we have 74 homicides year to date versus 75 year to date last year versus 71 in 2022 versus 78 in 2021. And our homicide clearance rate last year finished well over 70%, which is higher than the national average. And right now we're at 61% year to date, still higher than the national average. And as of May 26, 2024, Comstat, overall crime is down 21% compared to this time last year. We talked about seizing 36 guns. So far this year, we've arrested 400 people with guns. And we also recovered over 1,000 firearms. We seized them and recovered them, and they sent to our lab. So with the Playground Bar and Grill shooting last night, 6 people were shot. There was more than 100 shell casings. St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department is working with problem properties and other stakeholders to address issues at this establishment. If you do your homework, there's several other incidents that have happened prior to this incident happening last night. We've received 19 calls for service to this area so far this year, with 8 ShotSpotter activations. And of the 6 victims shot, 2 are convicted felons and 2 are documented gang members. Knowing people with the highest propensity for violence, carrying guns, known to each other, is sometimes a recipe for disaster. With too many guns in the hands of people that are going to use them in incidents like this. Trying to reduce crime. We've seen progress, but there's more work to do. We have a comprehensive plan, always reevaluating our plan, our strategies, and adjust them. It could happen same times during the day. It can happen weekly. It can happen hourly. We make sure we're very flexible to try to make sure that we stay ahead of the patterns and trends. The plan is working. We've seen few instances where cops were in the right place at the right time, and we saw some incidents downtown the last couple of weeks where one of our officers interrupted another person shooting someone, which ended up being a homicide, but the person did live for a few hours, and he almost prevented a homicide from happening. And you saw with the sheriffs, we're in the right place down at the Metrolink station last week, also prevented a person from shooting at other people. So let's be clear. If you commit violence in our city, we will use the weight and the full force of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, our federal and state counterparts and partners, and having a strong partnership with this circuit attorney, Gabe Gore, and our U.S. Attorney, Sailor Fleming. We will not tolerate this. We will not tolerate gang violence. We will not tolerate gun violence. And we're going to use everything in our power to make sure that we bring people to justice so you're not going to harm the community. And how do we do that? Overall comprehensive plans, you can go to our website and take a look at that. But we also have to leverage technology. And the technology that we're using, we use ShotSpotter, we use NIBIN, National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. We use crime gun intelligence. We test the shell casings. We use license plate readers. We use video that's out there. And we get community support and build trust from going to all those community meetings where we're working together with information to make sure we can keep our communities safe and make sure we hold those accountable that are committing these crimes in our community, and especially gun crimes, people having guns either legally and or illegally and using them to harm other people. State gun laws, pleading with policymakers help. You've seen me down at the Jefferson City, many of you, several times this year and several times last year. We're always talking about reasonable gun laws. Very difficult to come into a state where it's not prohibited for juveniles to carry a firearm. That doesn't happen in other states. That doesn't happen in the states. And so I'm always pushing for reasonableness with our gun laws. And we're seeing time and time again, guns in the hands of convicted felons. We need to hold them accountable as well. They are prohibited. We want to make sure that they're held accountable when our officers make those arrests and take these individuals off the street. That's an armed confrontation. An armed confrontation every time you take a deadly weapon off the streets, and we make sure that our officers, we validate that and make sure we put the best case forward and make sure that the rest of the criminal justice system's looking at it and we're getting these trigger pullers off the street. Let's talk about prevention, intervention, and enforcement. We continue to work with the administration, Mayor Jones' administration, the Office of Violence Prevention, Behavioral Health Bureau, faith-based organizations, youth services on preventing crime, intervening with violent individuals, and enforcing the law. We are prepared for the summer. Patrols have increased across the city, including downtown, with the department's authorized overtime, and there's competitive secondary shifts for our officers throughout the city. Save Lives Now initiative, that's been talked about for the last several weeks. They've been meeting, getting this going. And their goal is to reduce homicides in the region, working together in the region by 20%. The first meeting was in May, and dozens of representatives throughout the region were meeting and will coordinate with regional law enforcement to make sure we stop crime when it crosses our borders. And that's really to focus deterrence, which is National Network of Safe Community, David Kennedy's work for John Jay College of Criminal Justice. If you want to look that up and to get more information on that, it does work when it's implemented in the right way, and we've done that in other cities where those that have highest propensity for violence, we want them out of violence. We don't want to rearrest them, and we want to make sure that they become valuable members of the community. And so we're also looking at that way of trying to bring down crime in our city. So with that, I'll open up for any questions.
Talk about overtime, second shift. How many officers are y'all still down, and what would you be comfortable at?
So we're at 906 total officers. Our budget strength is about 1220, 1224, depending where this budget's going to be. What I'd be comfortable at is 1224, budgeted strength. What chief wouldn't want to have as many officers as possible? But when it comes to the officers, I'm really proud of these officers because we're going to get that number back up. There's recruitment campaigns out there. You're seeing billboards. You're seeing explorers, cadet program. We're partnering up with Harris Stowe. We're having youth academies this summer. We're trying to get people back into this profession. And 22 officers that left our police department in the last 9 months, well, didn't leave in 9 months. They left, some of them left before I got here, have now come back. Because the mayor has given a historic raise last year, about a $12,000 raise, and we have an economic reopener, and that's across the ranks. Because we're now economically competitive with other police jurisdictions. So when people get trained here, they don't leave for other jurisdictions. 22 have come back. I just swore in one last Friday, and I have a few more in the hopper. That's a good sign that people are coming back to our police department that had left. So to answer your question, 1220 I would love to be at, but we're at 908. That's including the trainees that are in the academy. But it's the comprehensive plan that you put in place, and what are the officers doing when you strategically deploy them in the places that you need the most? You got to answer 911 calls. You got to make sure that everything's prioritized, and you got to have the officers out with the right plan. You got a Comstat plan, business management principles applied to police work, and these officers, the ones that have stayed and continue to come in this police department, they are going out and they're executing this plan. And I just talked about historic lows and homicides. And I also talked about crime being down another 21% from where it was last year. That's not by accident. That's from the good work of these officers executing the plan, plus having community meetings, building the trust with the community and all the other stakeholders, because we can't do this alone. And without them, they should be, some of these successes that I talked about is not just policing alone. It's because all the other partners in the community have come together.
That 908, you mentioned some are in the academy right now.
Yeah.
How many of those 908 are actively walking the streets at this moment, and how many are still training?
Right now, we should have, I believe it's 28 in the academy, depending each day. If one dropped out, I just swore in someone on Friday, so I'm kind of giving you the numbers. I would say about 28, take that out of the 908, and then I guess you do the math, you'd be at 880. So commissioned officers are out there, but you got to remember there's days off, there's people on vacation, there's people out sick. Every department has to deal with that. But that's the amount that could be out there at commissioned officers.
That's 880 that are actually out there on the ground driving around, or is that including supervisors?
That's all commissioned police officers. They're in various units throughout the city and also in different areas, administrative, but a lot of them still do overtime, a lot of them out there. I'm a commissioned police officer. I'm actually riding around, but I'm not answering calls for service, but I'm actually part of the whole strategy.
With that being the number that we see, has there been any consideration into Highway Patrol coming in to do some of the traffic citations as opposed to our officers and letting them respond to
Right.
calls for service?
Well, I don't want to talk about other police departments. The amount of officers of being down officers, if you do your homework in a lot of other police departments, and including the Missouri Highway Patrol, I think they are in the same situation that we are. So they don't have the luxury of being at budgeted strength as well. So we do work together. And if you look at, I think we've done 14 missions together. And you've seen that, we've put that out on our social media page, that it might be up to 14 missions right now. We've worked with Highway Patrol together, and we also work with the county police. So we're trying to use force multipliers to try to calm the traffic down, especially on those major arteries and the highways that we see. So yes, we would love if they could come in and they had the capability of coming in and taking over the highways. I've worked in other police departments where we've let the state police take over the highways. I would be for that. But right now, they're also dealing with staffing issues, as we are. And so we got to try to make sure that we partner up. There's memorandums of understanding and there's mutual aid between us to work in the region to try to calm the traffic down and/or make sure people drive safely.
Chief, you did talk about the homicide clearance numbers improving a bit over the last couple of years, but there are still thousands of friends and family who don't have answers about the death
Right.
of their loved one. What do you say to family members who have been waiting, and sometimes decades, for answers from the police department and ensuring them that they're going to have access to justice?
Yeah, that's bringing justice to these families, working these cold cases, making sure our detectives are calling them back, even if there isn't an update. But what I appeal to is making sure that we have Crime Stoppers. You can give tips. Are there people out there that have information? Please come forward for these families. Please come forward because we want to make sure we bring justice to these families. And it's going to be a small consolation for the pain that they've suffered. And I've been at these vigils and memorial masses for their loved ones. And that's the number one question. Please don't forget about my family member. And I make sure that detectives that have the case continue to call them back and make sure that we can at least give them the update. And sometimes it's still the same, and if they have any information. But we got to keep checking back in because we want to solve those cases as well.
Chief has time for 2 more questions.
Chief, what's your response to the downtown groups that sent out a letter last night, really a news release talking about saying they want a real plan, saying that the patrol downtown have been sporadic, and in response to the Citizens for a Greater Downtown St. Louis and the Downtown Neighborhood Association?
Yeah, listen, crime is down. It's down across the city. There are some highlighted incidents that is explained in that letter, but it's still down. But when you have violent crime, we're trying to prevent that every single time it happens. We do have a good plan in place. We are down officers throughout the city. So I fairly distribute police officers throughout the city because I can't just put them in one place. We do use overtime throughout the city. We have a strategic plan, and I've got a lot of positive feedback in the last year and a half when it comes to people coming in, tourists, conventions, business people. So when I see something like that, yeah, it's alarming. We're addressing some of these high-profile incidents, but just like any other city, we're going to have them. We're going to look to prevent them. We got a good plan in place. That plan has been out there. I talked about it, I think, a couple of weeks ago when we made an announcement about the improvements downtown. And it's almost down almost 50% from where it was 2 years ago. But when we have these spats of violence, we're going to hold those people accountable that are actually committing that type of violence. And that's what we got to continue to do. So my answer to them is that we had interruptions during the pandemic and after the George Floyd murder and the civil unrest. We had interruptions in the court systems. We had interruptions in making sure there was grand juries and holding people accountable. And we also, quite frankly, when I walked through the store, we weren't actually, when we arrested people, they weren't being charged. So, we have a circuit attorney that's charging every case when our officers make that. People are being held accountable for carrying guns and committing violence, and that takes a little while to catch up. So there is a plan in place. It's comprehensive, and downtown's getting their fair share, just like everyone else with the amount of police officers we have. So that's my answer to them, and, you know, I'm at meetings with the same people that put that out, and I'll continue to have those conversations, and, you know, there is progress. So I think that's being left out of that, and crime is down, but we have a long way to go. I'm with them. I'm not denying that.
Dirk or Austin, you guys haven't asked anything. Is there anything you guys want to ask? One more question. Chief.
You know, I can't help but notice that this is a lot of the stuff you say at neighborhood meetings. It's got to be frustrating when we have these overall crime trends are down, but you have these upticks, and that's. I think on the whole, people still feel like this is a violent city,
Right.
and the highs you're coming down from are highs. They're really bad. Is there a path to get to a point where the city is not what it has been, a violent city? Do you think so?
Yes, absolutely. If you look at my track record in the cities that I've been in, you can take a look at the New York story. You can even take a look at the Chicago story from 2011 to 2015. You look at the Wilmington, Delaware story. I've been in cities where they felt that we're in a bad place, perception of crime was high, and even when crime came down, it took a long time for perception to catch up to reality. So if you go out and interview a person and we tell you crime's down, but they've just been a victim of a robbery, you interview that person, they're going to tell you crime isn't down because it was personal to them, and I get that. So overall, we have to sustain it. So I'm just talking, I've been here almost a year and a half, and we have to sustain it, and that's when people start to believe it. But we had a long way to go, and if you take a look at where we were, one question was asked to me, you know, the homicides are down from pandemic levels. Well, that's why I always say it's down 10 years, 10-year low. So it was pre-pandemic levels it's been down. And overall crime has come down substantially by the hard work from the police officers and the community and the prosecutors and the criminal justice system and everybody coming together. But we got to sustain it. Perception takes a long time to catch up to when we're starting that progress. And because people are skeptical, it's going to go back up. And there are going to be incidents that we had this weekend that sometimes are going to challenge some of the progress that we've made. And that's why I wanted to have this, let you know what's going on for the summer, let you know what our plan is, you know, really talk about the investment that we're making over the other things, and the mayor talks about, and the Office of Violence Prevention, and then regionally what we're looking at. We're out there, but I just wanted to reinforce that was going on, reinforce some of the numbers, and talk to you about a plan that we have in place. And also, that's going to take a while, and I've seen that in other cities where it does take a while, where perception takes longer to catch up to some reality, and we got a lot more work ahead of us.
All right. Thank you, everyone. If there's any other questions, feel free to email us. We'll be responsive to them.
Thank you, everyone.
Good job. Yes, sir.